If you're young and just single and a mother,
You never know what God can do.
but you better believe you can make it through it. Stand up tall and pay your dues.
This is YSM. What's up, y'all? Welcome to Young Single Mothers. I'm your host, Yolanda, and today I'm talking to this beautiful human right here. Her name is Trésor. Is that how you say Trésor?
Trésor.
Oh, see how good I am. So before all y'all who like to judge and are like, oh my gosh, she looks so young, how can she be a mother? It is not like that at all. Trey was raised by what is now an ex-single mom, and she is so willing to come and share her experiences with us. So thank you so much for being here, Trey.
Anytime.
Yeah.
I was so excited actually when you asked. I was like, yay.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
nice. I love it when people respond like that because you know
Yeah.
you come across people, you ask them, and they're like, I don't know if that's what I want to. I want to
Yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah.
I don't know
People
whether
tend
it's
to
a
be very
cultural
closed.
thing.
I've noticed that as well. Like, I don't know. There are just certain things, I guess, in our culture that people don't openly speak about, which I find kind of strange because I'm quite the open person.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about everything and find out about everything.
Yay. And Trey, okay, so we were talking about this before. You have a YouTube channel, which I love. Such an
Yeah.
inspiring,
Aw.
awesome woman of God that she is. And you
Aw.
started at such a young age. When did you start YouTubing and what inspired you to do that?
Ooh, when did I start YouTubing? Maybe 5 years ago, if not more. I started about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was inspired. So I'd been watching YouTube for quite a while, but I couldn't really find. I found a lot of older women of God, for lack of a better way to explain it. People who were sharing the word on YouTube, women that were sharing the word on YouTube.
Yeah.
But I wasn't finding people in my age group that were doing that. Most of them were doing like makeup tutorials and like other fun things.
Yeah.
And I remember like finding this gap and watching and being like, I can't find somebody that's my age that I can relate with, who loves God and who has a God-centered YouTube channel.
Oh, that's
But I didn't think that I would end up doing it because I was watching and I kept on just watching and hoping that maybe I would find someone who was doing that. And so one day, I think in my prayer time, God was like, why don't you do it? And I
Yeah,
was
it's like,
"Ah."
nudge, nudge. Oh, that is great.
So that's kind of how it started, really.
And
Yeah.
since then, you have obviously ventured into doing so many things. Being young, and you have the freedom to explore yourself, know who
Yeah.
you are, what you want to do. What other things have you been, investing your time in?
Okay, there's a lot, a lot going on. So most of my time is spent at school. Currently studying biomedical science in my third year at Mzuzu University. So that takes up most of my time. Outside of that, I do a lot of church activities. I lead a cell group of sorts. So I spend a lot of time doing that. Outside of that, I have always been into business. So from a young age, at like 9, I was baking and trying to sell cake.
Love cake.
Yeah. So from a young age, I've always loved the concept of making my own money, being able to sell things and make my own money. So business has also always been a thing that I'm involved in. So currently I started an ice cream business during the Corona time.
I tried that ice cream. It's good.
Oh, thank you.
I gave extensive feedback.
Yeah, actually, which I really appreciated because sometimes people will just be like, oh, it's nice. And I'm like, can you give me more feedback though?
Yeah.
Yeah, so started that during Corona and that has been going well. I think outside of school and church and business, don't think there's too much more that I'm involved in.
You dabbled in nails?
Yes, at some point I was doing nails last year. Not last year because now we're in 2021, but 2019. 2019? Yeah, and a bit into 2020, I did nails. How did that start? According to my mom, I've always been obsessed with my nails.
Okay.
I don't know if I share the same story, but she says I've always been obsessed with my nails.
Yeah.
But again, YouTube, I I think there was an event and I had to get my nails done, and when the girl was doing my nails, I was like, hey, I can do that. Like, I want to try that.
Yeah.
So I tried it, and because I've always loved business, I was like, why don't I just do it for other people too and try to make money? So that's kind of how the nails thing started.
Look at you. You see what I was like, this girl's amazing. I absolutely love it when young people just go for it, you know, or just people in general. Because I'm not young and I'm going for it.
You're pretty young.
Right? Yeah. So out of interest, because, you know, I just love to know things, do you have a book that is memorable to you, and why is it memorable?
Probably would say The Atonement Child by Francine Rivers. I don't know if you've heard about it.
You know, I've heard of Francine Rivers. I hear she's got a lot of great stories, but I'm not a fiction reader. So
Francine Rivers is amazing. Like, she is probably my favorite author. I normally don't have favorites, but if I had to pick a favorite author, it would definitely be Francine Rivers. I love how she writes.
Yeah.
So yeah, The Atonement Child is a beautiful story about this girl who, a college student, I believe, read it a couple of years ago, so this is really from memory.
Yeah.
But I think she was a uni student. She gets raped and then gets pregnant, but she's a Christian, so it's really just her journey with God, figuring out, like, would it be so bad if I got an abortion?
Oh, wow.
And I think that book, oh my gosh, I don't know, I just love that book.
So did she eventually have the baby?
Yeah, she did.
Single mom life.
Yeah, she had the baby, and it's just a beautiful story. And I think it just stands out to me because, one, I think growing up, one of my biggest fears was getting raped. That was just...
Why? For what reason?
I don't know. Like, I've been trying to think through it in my mind and figure out, like, what the root of it was or is, but that was just always my fear. I always feared that. And so I think when I read that book, I was like, oh my gosh, this is somebody who it did happen to. I mean, it's a fiction, but I think it's based on a true story. And she lived through it. Yeah. So even though, not that I knew that I was gonna get raped, but I was like, in the event that it did happen, I could live through it. So yeah, that was that's why I love that book.
All right,
it's a bit dark, but
you know, not judging, not my thing. So let's talk about your life growing up. Obviously, you were raised by a single mom.
An amazing single mom.
Phenomenal. I know her personally. But yeah, like, what was it like for you? Like, at what age did, if it at all it did, it hit you that, oh, I'm being raised by a single mom, this is weird, or this is strange, or was it just normal?
I think the first time I really remember is probably like maybe when I was in standard 4 or thereabouts, because, you know, kids will always ask, like, oh, where's your dad? And like, actually, growing up, I made up a story because I guess, I don't know, your mind has a way of filling in the blanks. So I made up a story, I made up a character who I thought my dad was and where he was. So, because people would always ask me and I didn't know what to answer. So I started telling them that my dad was a soldier and that you never saw him because he'd been deployed.
Wow, what an imagination.
I know, right?
Wow, yeah.
So that was my story. That was the story that I told people because my mind... I guess my mom and I had never really had that conversation as well until she didn't know I was going around telling this story. So until she realized that I was telling people the story, she's like, oh, wait, we need to fix that. That's not who your dad is, and we need to have this conversation. But I think that was about, grade 4, must have been maybe 9 or thereabouts. And I realized that I was different because I would see other kids with their dads or both their parents. And then I'd realize, oh, mine is not around. And then again, I'd be bombarded with all these questions about where my dad was. And then I think that's when I started to realize that, oh, okay, it seems this is not how everybody else goes through life. So, yeah.
What did you feel?
That's a good question. I don't know if I can really place a feeling to it because that's all I had known all my life. To a certain extent, it felt normal. Because I didn't know anything else. Like that's what I knew. My mom and my granny. And also because in my family, I think I had seen a lot of that, like mothers raising their children. So it wasn't new to me in that sense. So I didn't feel, at that age anyway, at that young age, I didn't feel too anything about it. It was just normal for me, until obviously when you start getting older and you start thinking about it and you start wondering why your dad is not around or what it is about you, and you start thinking that maybe it's something wrong with you. So yeah, I think at a young age though, it really just felt normal.
Yeah. So was there a point where you got to, well, once you and your mom did talk about it, did you get to know who your dad is, and have you ever had a relationship with him? What's the situation there?
Yeah, I did get to talk. So we talked about it. So my dad used to send emails. So he would send emails, but this is why I think the story made sense for me. Like a soldier, he's busy, so once in a while he'll send an email.
Yeah.
So back in the day, like that, he would send an email, and my mom would come home from work with these typed letters, and she would read them to me. So that's like, I knew that he was there. Like I knew that my dad hadn't died, but he was very distant. So when we had the conversation, then she was like, no, you guys, I think it's like you're at that age where you need to actually have a relationship with him. So she called him for me to speak to him. We had a conversation for the first time. I think I must have been like, again, maybe 10 or so. And then 2 years later, I met him for the first time. He came to Malawi. So he lives in South Africa. So he came to Malawi, and I met him for the first time. That was interesting because at that point I think I was like 12 or so. Yeah. But as a child also, you're very hopeful and you are very like bright-eyed, if I can say so. Yeah, I was very, very hopeful. Like I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Yeah. I was so excited. And so, what was your question again? I think I got lost.
Where your relationship with your dad is.
Okay, yeah. So from there, so I met him then at 12, and then from there, I think I got a phone. So then we would talk. In those days, I think we were using Mixit.
I don't even know what Mixit is.
Oh yeah, it was like before BBM and before WhatsApp. There was Mixit.
Wow.
Yeah, and before Facebook, there was Mixit. Okay. So we would talk on Mixit.
I feel like I missed a whole thing.
Yeah. I feel like people should comment if they know what Mixit is.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so we would talk on Mixit once in a while.
Yeah.
And then we would talk here and there, and that's honestly, since then, that's kind of how it's been. And then I went to school in South, so then I got to see him a bit more often, and we have a relationship, kind of. We talk here and there. It's not like we don't live together, so I'm not talking to him every day, but we do talk here and there.
Okay. So coming from that experience of having to, make up stories, and do you always feel like, I wish my mom had told me earlier, or do you ever have these feelings of, okay, for example, if there's a single mom out there who's just had her baby girl or baby boy, what advice would you give when it comes to, the dad and letting their child know about who he is and all that kind of stuff? Coming up next week.
I know that sometimes, like in our culture, people, like if that happens, then the grandmother becomes the mom, and the child grows up thinking that the grandmother is their mom.
So you've talked about the dad, the stepdad. So let's talk about that, because your mom got married when you were actually much, much older.
Until obviously I had to start answering these questions, and I started making up the stories when I think my mom realized, oh, let's talk about this. He didn't want to marry her without me being okay with it. So when somebody else stepped in and was her everything, that was a bit hard.
Do not miss part 2 of Raise Her Up.
You never know what God can do.
You better believe you can make it through it. Stand up tall and pay your dues.
This is YSM.